Hello, I'm Dale Snowart. This is a brief lecture summary of the main ideas of Noddings' ethic of care, ethic of caring, and her philosophy of education. Noddings' philosophy of education is based in an ethic of caring. From within that perspective, the primary purpose of education is the maintenance, enhancement, and development or nurturance of the ethical self of the student. The ethical self of the student as one caring, which entails the nurturance of the ethical ideal, and of the capacity for care of the student. The ethic of caring for Noddings is grounded in the existence of what she refers to as natural care. Natural care is conceived as a universal feminine attribute as well as capacity, and here she is influenced by Carol Gilligan's analysis and conclusions in her celebrated book, In a Different Voice. Natural caring rests upon the proposition and the experience of human interrelationship, that human beings exist within a web of relationships that is interdependent. We have a self that's interdependent and interrelated with all those others, other human beings and other beings who we exist in relationship with. And natural caring is a particular kind of relationship, which is described by the existentialist philosopher Martin Buber, and that's a relationship described by him as an I-thou relationship. It is a relationship where one is present, fully present, and receptive to the other, conceived in Noddings' case, conceived as the cared for. So natural caring or natural care is based upon this idea of receptivity and relationship, a particular I-thou kind of relationship. In natural caring, there's no ethical effort required, in the sense that wanting to care and being obligated from a normative perspective to care are unified. They exist in unity. There is no distinction between wanting to care and being obligated to care for the other. In a state of natural caring, one just cares, naturally, spontaneously. And this is a natural hearing of the call of the other person. The call, and it is a call of, I must do something in response to the needs, interests, problems, suffering of the other, of the cared for. However, one may reject the call of natural caring. One might not heed the call of the other. And that gives rise to the question, why care? Or, in other words, why be moral? So the ethic of caring, in turn, requires an ethical ideal of caring, in the sense that it requires the normative acceptance and affirmation of caring, an affirmation of, I must respond. Here we go beyond the natural caring to the realm of an ethical commitment, affirmation and commitment to caring. This normative affirmation of care appeals for Noddings to one's ethical self, a conception of one's ethical self, normative affirmation of the ideal of caring is thereby grounded in the recognition of the value and realization of one's ethical self as one caring. So the ethical ideal of the self, or the ethical self, is one of identifying with that ethical self. And it is an answer to the question, why care? It presupposes one's highest order interest in maintaining and enhancing one's ethical self is redeemed in the normative affirmation of care. We find our highest good in being the ethical self of one caring. This is, for Noddings, this is the foundation, or the normative foundation of an ethic of caring. And the ethic of caring goes beyond the existence of natural care. It goes beyond it. It includes it. It's grounded in the existence of natural care. But at the same time, the ethic of care transcends or goes beyond the natural care to include an ethical affirmation of the ideal of caring that is linked to our conception of an ethical self as one caring. From this perspective, the purpose of education is at least twofold. One purpose is to strengthen the student's affective world by presenting a selection of that world, and to work cooperatively with the student in the development of her competence in that world. And this is the educational domain of intelligence. The second and more primary purpose of education for Noddings, as noted earlier, is to nurture and enhance the student's ethical self as one caring. As she writes, the student is infinitely more important than the subject matter, end quote. Therefore, schools and classrooms should be designed to support the ethic of caring and the development of caring individuals. From within this perspective of the purpose of education, grounded in the ethic of caring, she conceives the idea of teaching in the following way. From this perspective, the teacher should enter an I-thou relationship with the student. That is, the teacher should be present with and receive the student as intensely as possible whenever the student is encountered. The I-thou relationship, of course, does not, and the pedagogical relationship thereby does not require that it be perpetual as such, but that whenever we encounter a student, we should attempt to be fully present to that student and to receive them in an authentic way. And thus, this relationship, the I-thou teaching relationship, includes three further dimensions and requirements. One, it includes dialogue, and this entails the recognition of the student's needs, interests, problems, values, etc., and it entails entering into dialogue with the student about them. This is a very Deweyan idea. It is an idea of student-centeredness, that to care for the student, we must recognize their needs and their interests and work with them and guide their needs and interests to further development. The second element of teaching from this perspective concerns practice, that the development of care of the ethical self of the student as one caring cannot be transmitted directly to the student from the teacher, but can only be developed through practice. And therefore, teaching involves providing opportunities for the student to practice caring. And that can take the general form of caring apprenticeships, which involve service learning, etc. So the pedagogical approach from the perspective of the ethic of caring would entail necessarily the active participation of students in practices of care. Thirdly, it includes confirmation. That is, through these processes, the student reveals to himself, or the student begins to recognize internally himself or herself as an ethical and intellectual being. In conclusion, here in Noddings' Ethic of Care and its educational implications in the form of a general philosophy of education, she is influenced by a number of intellectual sources. One, and these are primary influences. One is feminism. She's taking a feminist point of view by grounding her ethic of care and her philosophy of education on the basis of a universal feminine attribute, as well as the recognition that we exist within an interrelated web of relationships, an interrelated and interdependent web of relationships. Carol Gilligan had argued or found in her research that girls and women have a strong tendency to orient themselves morally in terms of caring relationships rather than in terms of principles of justice. And Noddings here is building on that finding. She's also influenced by John Dewey, in particular the idea of grounding the educational process in the felt needs, problems, interests of the student. A student caring for Noddings involves a student-centered educational process. She's deeply influenced by existentialism as well, in particular Martin Buber's conception of relationships of I-thou versus I-it relationships, as well as other existentialist points of view such as authenticity, as well as Maxine Green's idea of wide awakeness in the form of being present in the world. Being present to others is fundamental to the ethic of care, and thereby the development of presence in the student is an essential dimension or aspect of the development of their ethical selves as one's caring. Thank you.